Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. We're delighted you're in class with us today. If you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line, 605-477-3249, 605-477-3249. Nathan is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. Doc Ram's with us today. Welcome, Doc Ram.
Good morning. I'm in shell shock. No, man, check it out. I am at this moment in post-traumatic stress syndrome, and literally, and I have been bombarded this last week, right up to this very moment, with creepy, and I have no idea if it's me bringing it on. There's influences from outside. I believe there are. Police reports have been filed. Nothing is happening, and I am at my end of the rope. So,
Rick, let me. You're not alone. You're not alone. Let me tell you what's happening
why? Why?
All right.
I'm trying to empower things. Why?
All right. Well, you're a nice guy.
Except an alien. Why would anything want to stop me from what I'm doing right now?
All right. Well, let me share something with you that Norm Shealy, you know Dr. Norman Shealy, medical doctor, brain surgeon, surgeon of the year, author, broadcaster, seminar presenter, world a seminar leader. He travels all over the world teaching people, invented the TENS unit. He's got patents.
Saving lives. I watched him save a life once at one of your conferences. Right then, right there. It happened in front of me.
Yeah.
I watched him do it.
Well, okay. Norm Shealy, okay? So what happens to him? His clinic gets broken into. He had a cash drawer. They stole his cash. They stole a couple items from his business partner in his medical clinic, Dr. Sergey Sorin. Okay, some items were stolen. And he filed a police report, and they weren't very interested. They weren't very interested. I'm talking about Springfield Police Department. Okay? Shortly thereafter, like within a couple of weeks, it happens again. They break in, or he or she breaks in, and steals not only the cash, but the cash drawer. There was less cash that time. So what I'm saying is, here's a good guy, and he's being picked on as well. Now, is that to terrorize him?
Is it statistically random, or is there something more going on? And here's the deal. You can't ever really know. There's no closings.
Well, what I did, there was a rash of break-ins around here in barns and sheds and things, and there were people, well, probably just one guy, and he was stealing things. And here's what they do in our neck of the woods. So there are a lot of barns that are built with steel siding. It's this ribbed steel siding. It's called barn siding. And you've seen it on roofs. It's the same material. And it's affixed one of three ways, either with hidden fasteners, which is very expensive and not often done, nails with neoprene washers to seal the rain and moisture out, or screws, which are screwed in with neoprene washers affixed to them. And when the barns are built with the screws, thieves come along with a cordless screw gun, and they have the attachment that fits those screws, the screw heads, and they just unscrew a panel of siding. They just unscrew it. And then they peel back the siding, walk in, and when they're inside, you can't tell because the the siding will just
Everything's
return
locked.
to its
It looks
normal.
normal. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks normal. And they take what they want. They exit through the steel siding. They put the screw gun back in screws back in with the screw gun, and nobody knows until you're looking for your equipment, machinery, tools, whatever happened to be in the barn or the shed. That's one thing that happens around here. Another thing that happens around here is, when there was a gasoline shortage, gasoline prices were, going up, to $4 a gallon for diesel. That same kind of technology was used, that cordless screw gun with a 1/4-inch drill bit. They would go and find these fuel tanks that farmers had or the police had, these hidden places where the police had gas for their cruisers, and they would drill a hole. They would tap along the tank to find out where the fuel level was, and they would drill a hole, a couple inches below that, and the fuel tank would start spouting out gasoline or diesel. And they would just fill up their 5-gallon cans and leave. And the fuel would continue to spill out. Unbelievable. So what I did was, I carry a gun, and I walk around our farm with a gun. I go shopping with my gun. And early on when we first moved here, a guy said to me, I knew this guy was a thief. And he said to me, so this was the first time I met him, a neighbor. Maybe 1.5 miles, 2 miles down. No, probably 1.5 miles down the road. And he said, so what would you do? Vincent, what would you do if you saw somebody in your house? I said, well, I'd shoot him. And he said to me, you'd shoot him? I said, of course. Of course. Now, I'm paraphrasing. So, of course, because you're indicating that someone was in my house. He shouldn't have been there. He'd be threatening me and my family with death or serious injury. Yeah, I'd shoot him. And I was very matter of fact about that. And by me saying that, I have earned a reputation as being a killer. And literally, people think that that's what I do. I kill people. And and when I first moved here, I would work on the farm with our son for 18 months. Our son and I were building this house till we got it closed in so that the rest of the family could move in here. And my dad and mom and our children were in Virginia, except for one son I brought with me. And he and I just built this house. And we had a guy helping us who was, we'll call him, when I wasn't here, he would be the foreman, okay, or the builder. And he would direct the framing crew or whatever the crew was that was working here with us. And one day they said to him, what does that guy do? He's here and then he's gone. He's here and he's gone. Well, my dad was really sick. He was involved in a really horrific car crash. A guy fell asleep at the wheel, crashed head-on into him. And he was in surgical trauma intensive care for probably 5 months. The same team that Steve Reeves, Superman, was treated by. And so for the next 10 years, we took care of my dad at home. And, had a feeding tube in his stomach. And we had a crane to lift him in and out of bed. And it was pretty strenuous on everybody. But that's what we did. And so my family took care of my dad and my mom while my son and I were building this house for the entire family here in Missouri. Well, the guy who was helping me with building the house was 63 years old at the time. He was a native of the area, and a lot of people knew him. And so they said to him, the guys who were doing the framing and some of the other work said to him, what does that guy do? What does he do? And so that 63-year-old guy said, I know what he does. So what he does is he goes to Virginia and he does a hit. He kills somebody. And then he comes back here for a couple of weeks, until it cools off. Then he goes back to Virginia and does another hit. And then he comes back here to Missouri till it cools off. So I have this reputation of being a killer. Now, people are not interested in borrowing, without our permission, anything from our farm, because that reputation has traveled several towns over, believe it or not. I mean, not only in our little hamlet, but they think people believe that they're absolutely convinced that I am a killer. And so I haven't tried to convince them any of anything different, and it's worked out to my advantage. Now, of course, we don't have a lot of friends because, who wants to be a friend with a killer, right? So that's their opinion of me, and I'm not going to work to change it. So what I'm saying is that's how we have handled some of the stresses of life in the country with some of the threats that other people deal with. Other people think that, if they report this guy to the police are going to know. The guy who commits the crime is going to know. He's going to attack him and shoot him and kill him, and so they don't report him. They don't want to be in the line of fire. Me, I prevented all that by letting them know that, if someone came into my house and my family was threatened with death or serious bodily injury, I'd have to take action and shoot the person. So that's how I did it, Rick. You have any comments on that?
No, I am. I'm scared. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to have any in my life. I don't even want to have that kind of thinking going on in my... And yet, in some ways, I don't have any choice.
Well, Rick, you've been to the farm. You know that we're in the middle of
nowhere. Oh, no, you're not like that at all. I'm not allowed to carry a gun on the outside. My girlfriend does not want me to do that. She'd like to take my pistol away from me. I have a concealed weapons permit. I remember when I accidentally showed that to one of the at the airport in Chicago, and I missed my flight. I thought it was my driver's license. I pulled it out and showed it to her, and she got all freaked up. It's I don't understand what's going on out here in the universe. It's like the Wild Wild West, only the rules are different now.
Now, when you say you showed it to her, are you talking about you showed it to the person?
Well, she wanted my passport, and I didn't have it, so I went for my driver's license.
Yeah. Well, I pull out my concealed carry permit all the time. I just put people on notice that if I think that the situation is going to be uncomfortable, I just let them know that I have a concealed carry permit. The next thing they assume is I've got a gun on me. And it may or may not be right. Most of the time it's right. I mean, that's life in the country. I can't call the cops. First of all, they're too heavy to carry around. And may not show up. And if they do, when's it going to be? An hour and a half? Who knows? So we protect ourselves. Doc Ram's with us. I'm Vin Finelli. This is USA Prepares. We'll be right back. Doc Ram's with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. So Section 01.023.1, Missouri Legislature, right to keep and bear arms. And here's what it says. That the right of every citizen to keep and bear arms, ammunition, and accessories typical to the normal function of such arms in defense of his home, person, family, and property when lawfully summoned in the aid of civil power shall not be questioned. Okay? These rights guaranteed by this section shall be unalienable. So, we have the right to bear and own and carry arms in the state of Missouri. So, Rick, and if to answer your question maybe a little bit more, the guy across the road from us, now when I say across the road, I mean our neighbor. If you go out of our driveway and you walk across the dirt road, this is the neighbor I'm talking about. So, maybe 30 feet across from the edge of our property is his property. His property is probably about a half a mile along the road in terms of road frontage. And our road frontage lines up with his. So he was putting in a fence. And the fence he was putting in were those steel posts. And what you do is you pound in these steel posts with a fence post pounder, and every 10 feet, and then you string your barbed wire along those fence posts. So what he did was he was doing it in sections, or stages, I should say. So he pounded in post after post after post after post along this half a mile or so of road frontage. And the next step was he was going to attach the barbed wire to it. Well, he finished getting the post pounded in on the weekend, and he was going to come back in a few days or the next weekend and string the barbed wire and attach it all together. Well, between the time that he pounded them in and when he showed up to put in the barbed wire, someone pulled out every one of those posts. Well, they cost about $5 a piece at the time, maybe a little bit more. And they stole all of his fence posts. Now, these were pounded into the ground. Okay? They literally stole a fence. Right? Well, right across the road from that, at that time, was a pallet of fence posts that I bought. Now, someone spent the time to pull out his fence posts one after the next, and it probably took quite a while to do this, and load them in a truck and drive away. When they could have just gone to my property 100 feet away from where they stole the fence and just picked them out of a pile, off a pallet. Now, at the time, they were there. But what I'm saying is, it's one of two things. Either they didn't know that our fence posts were there and they could have just helped themselves. I mean, it would have been a terrible thing if I saw them. But instead, they pulled his out, which is way more work. So maybe our reputation is when you get to our particular road, you don't go to that place, meaning the Finelli farm. Just don't go there because those people are nuts. And that's kind of the reputation we have. So that kind of works in our favor. But, if we had a party and we said, and we invited the whole neighborhood or the whole village, nobody'd show up, which is kind of nice in itself. So that's kind of my response, Rick, to what you were addressing. Rick, do you have any comments on that, or would you like to talk about this?
I wished I was home in my mind. I've got so many different distractions going on that every day I'm not sure what's going to happen this day. Last night when I was trying to watch a movie just to de-amp with Julie, 4 times the power surged up and down. You can see it when I have these little lights. They'll get a little brighter and then they'll dim down again, and then bright and then dim down again. What's that? The fluctuations in the line? Enough that it triggered my computer in the middle of my movie to crash my computer 4 times. I had to reload the computer, and now I'm suspecting that fluctuation in the line has done something to my computer because it's acting like it has a virus this morning. Now, the fluctuation in the line is not related, yet because of the synchronicity of the two of them, I assume there's something related, and I never really know. No
I have an answer for that when we come back. Doc Ram's with us, richardallenmiller.com. Doc Ram's with us. So, Rick, I have a solution. It's a technical solution. I can describe it on the air about, these brownouts. And it's really simple. So what most people will do if they want to protect the computers and the software from becoming damaged and having file damage and physical damage to the hard drive and maybe the processor and the memory and that kind of thing, capacitors, what they'll do is they'll get an uninterruptible power supply. And you can buy them. My favorite brand is APC, American Power Conversion. Why? Because I've talked to their engineers when they first started up around the mid-1980s, and I liked what they had to say, and I've been using their products ever since. So an uninterruptible power system is very simple. It has several components in one box. It has a battery charger, an inverter, and a computer and switching network that looks at the wall outlet power. So you plug this into the wall, and when you do, the uninterruptible power system will look at your wall power and say, do I have 120 volts? Do I have 120 volts? Do I have 120 volts? And it'll keep doing that, and it will charge the battery, which is a sealed lead-acid battery typically, that if it won't spill and doesn't smell, and it'll last several years. And the idea is it will charge the battery so that if when it looks at the wall outlet it says, no power, and that could be in a few milliseconds of a power outage, it will automatically switch to battery backup, and it will use the inverter to continue powering that electrical equipment that's attached to it. So I have one of those, and I bought one of the largest ones that American Power Conversion manufactured and for homeowners, and it's 1,500 watts. So it's a fairly large one. It probably weighs 50 pounds. I bought it used on eBay for about $50. Okay? But didn't have any batteries, which was okay with me because shipping dead batteries is expensive. So I bought it without the batteries. Then I bought 2 batteries for $50 total, shipped. And so now I have $100 in this very large UPS. This UPS is probably a $500 item if it were new, or maybe even more, maybe $550. Then what I did was I got some Romex. Romex is the house wiring cable, if you will. And you can buy 250 feet of it for $43 right now at Home Depot. I'm not recommending Home Depot. I'm just saying they have it for $43 for 250 feet. That's 14 gauge. And it's house wiring. It's sheathed, and it comes with a ground. So black wire, white wire, and a ground, all sheathed, ready for pulling through your walls. And I bought some orange receptacles. I bought them on eBay for about $1 a piece. They were new old stock. And I bought orange ones because I wanted them to be a different color from the rest of the outlets in the house. The outlets in the house are either white or ivory. And so I bought these orange ones that really stick out. Mrs. Finelli's not too crazy about that. But what it tells you is that outlet is different from all the others. Something's different about it. It's orange. Well, what I did was I wired them all to the UPS. So I'm broadcasting from the dining room right now in our farmhouse, and I have an orange receptacle that's powering 3 computers, 3 monitors, the mixer, the headphone amplifier, everything I've got, the router, all the equipment is powered by this. Now the UPS is in a different location in the farmhouse. Now attached to that also, I ran the Romex to the kitchen, and we have a screen in the kitchen where we watch YouTube videos, and if we want to watch a movie or something on Netflix, the Blu-ray player is attached to an orange outlet, which is attached to the UPS, and so is a television screen, and so is the stereo equipment. And then another outlet in the kitchen is attached to a computer, and then we have other computers in the house, all attached to the same uninterruptible power system. So we've got about 20 minutes of reserve backup. So if we had electricity provided by the grid and it flickered, we'd notice that with the lights. We'd say, looks like we have unstable power. And if the power went out and the lights went out, we'd say, well, we've got 20 minutes to shut down all the computers. Okay? And also, the other thing that we have attached to this is some LED lights. So if for example, the power were to go out, and if we were attached to the grid, and if I were broadcasting, I've got 20 minutes to let our engineer know that we've got a power failure, and I'll either have to call in by phone, or I'll have to do a rerun because, the internet's down, the computers are going to go down, that kind of thing. So that is one way of fixing it, or addressing that problem. But in our case, we've gone a little beyond that, and we have a solar array, and we have a huge battery bank in addition to the UPS. So we have off-grid power as well. So in our case, it's a little different. But that simple UPS will be a great solution to common problems as they keep occurring at a greater frequency across our country. Okay? So that's what I think you all ought to consider. Now, I don't know anyone who has built a whole house UPS the way I have. I've talked to engineers. I've talked to lots of people who are computer savvy. No one I know has done that. Well, it's really simple. It's a natural extension of, well, why would we want to buy one UPS for each computer or each television? Why would we want to do that? Why not just buy a big one, a used one, and save a lot of money? So I spent less to wire our whole house, roughly. I mean, not every room, but for the most part. Wherever we need it, I've wired our whole house for less than the cost of a typical single UPS. And yet you can do it. It's going to take some work, but yes, you can do it. And if anyone wants
here's the problem with all of that. So I don't own my house. I'm a renter. And that's page 1. Page 2. Then Do I mow the lawn because it looks terrible, or do I wash the windows so I don't have to look at the lawn because they need to be washed? Wait, I don't have any cleaner. I have to go to buy my... Oh, I don't have any money. What happens is it's a cascading effect, as a metaphor. And you get to a place where what do you do first? No, he's on second. That's on third, but second is maybe you need to brush your teeth. It's just crazy. I don't know what to do because I'm overwhelmed with so many things to do and nowhere. You can't get there from here. It's sort of like the road doesn't exist, and you don't know who or what is doing all of this, and you get so overwhelmed, you lose the detail of who's actually involved in this. I think it's somebody close to me, but I have this gut, terrible, awful feeling that because of the convolution, I'm never going to have closings of knowing what exactly actually happened. You get so overwhelmed with so many different things going on all at one time that it's no longer a wound, it's a death threat. And I'm feeling it across the board in almost every area of my life. And where do you start? Well, the most important thing is my personal relationships. But what do you do when it's a gang-stalking protocol that is trying to erode your trust in judgments? Who's your enemy? Well, I thought, Julie and I, we have some really close friends. I mean, they would do anything for us. And yet, one of them, with no warning, pulled the rug out from under us and stopped contacting us, would not have contact. And why? We will probably never know that either. I'm guessing he works for the federal government, and that somebody, not the government, but somebody threatened him on his job because he mentioned that. But why? For what purpose? And when you look back at what I do and what I am, I'm retired. I have no resources. I have zero money. Believe this or not, at this moment, I actually qualify and have food stamps. How does that happen with all of my education and my ability? I've never not been able to make money. And yet, right this moment, I have no idea why nothing is working. I do one thing, it falls apart, no problem. We do another thing, it falls apart. And by the time you're up to the 12th thing, and the bills have not been paid, then you get panicky, and which one do you do first, the lawn or the windows? And at some point, I need to break. I need to get away. And I did not sign up for this or wish to expose any of my friends, especially my primary relationship, to this terrible thing that's happening in the world right now. She has come from a very simple, very basic life and she's a hard worker, and yet she's overwhelmed. If she's overwhelmed, imagine what's happening to me. And with no let up, if it isn't this, it's that. And it's like boiling the frog, and what's happened in the last 6 months is it stepped up. I've only had one order on Amazon in the last month. Now, one order on Amazon in 1 month, that's not right. And now I've got more debts because, just on my book sales, my books' ratings with Amazon are incredible. One of them is under 100,000. That means it's a massive seller of sorts if you know how to read Amazon. And yet, I had 2 orders on my website this last week, and yet I did John B. Wells. So there's obviously the possibility of ghost accounts. And yet, do you think I can find that out? And when there's just in 3 of my titles, 3 of them now, not 2, there's on Amazon, there are 5 different editions of it. What? I own the copyrights. I went to copyright.gov. There it is. I got the copyright. And then there's my ISBNs. I got the ISBNs. And yet, here I am. And it goes downhill from there. Because now, wording...
Hey, Rick, hold that thought. So, I have invited other talk show hosts to be on USA Prepares. Over the years, I've called them up and I said, hey, I'm Vin Finelli. I have a radio broadcast, and here's what we talk about. And would you consider coming on the air with me and talking about whatever their forte is? Okay. So I've called, and some people might call these guys competitors, okay, because they have radio shows. Well, I don't. I consider them part of a team. A team, whether they're on the same network or networks that I'm on, or whether they're on other networks. I consider us to be on a team of alternative radio broadcasters trying to get the truth out. So I've invited guys like John Statmiller, Kurt Wilson, Aaron Dakins, pharmacist Ben Fuchs, Erskine, Mike Parsons, Norm Shealy, Larry Pratt, and a host of others, just to name a few, and they've been on the air with me. Well, recently, I called another guy who's a radio broadcaster, and I invited him to be on the air with me, and he's, yes, good. Now, I'm paraphrasing, okay? And he was interested in coming on the air with me and spending an hour talking about his area of expertise. And he asked me the website, and I told him I'm an activist and all that. He went to the website, and the next day, I got the cold shoulder. I mean, he cut me off at the knees. And I understand that. I do. I literally understand it. So, I wrote him an email, or I wrote an email back that I sent to him, and other people were involved in this because I was kind of surprised that he cut me off at the knees. And actually, believe it or not, I didn't know this, but we are distantly related as part of a team, and I didn't know that. When I called him, and I didn't find out until maybe weeks after he said no. So I wrote an email that I sent him a copy of, and this was to another person. So I'm going to read this, but I'm going to change his name. I'm going to call him Jose. Jose's not his name, okay? And I'm not even going to tell you if it's a him or a her, but I'm going to refer to it as a him in this email. So I said to this other person, normally I don't have time for this, but in this case I'm making an exception to set the record straight regarding my interaction with Jose. And I'm making Jose up. That's not his name or her name. Okay? Yes, I did call Jose and invite him to be on my show, USA Prepares, because many radio hosts invite other hosts to be on their broadcasts as guests. That's all I did. I do not see other broadcasters as competitors, but as part of the big team. Actually, I didn't realize he and I were distantly related in, we'll call it a venture, okay? I had no intention of being on his show, nor had I asked him to be, nor do I have time to be, and nor do I want to be. Never have I asked anyone to be on their show. Frankly, I've been turning down interview opportunities with other hosts and in-person speaking engagements for well over a year now. And I've never asked Jose for help of any kind. I can see why Jose gave me the cold shoulder as soon as he visited our website. It advocates doing difficult things, learning new skills, and preparing for unpleasant events. It speaks the truth, exposes bad actors, and makes some people uncomfortable. I wish Jose the best that life has to offer. For me, I found that hard, deliberate, skillful, enthusiastic, persistent, and honest work are great ways to get there. Signed, Vincent Finelli. So what I'm saying, Rick, is you're not the only one. I feel that it has something to do with what you say and what I say and what other people who do what we do say, write, and communicate. And we are considered people who shape thoughts. We give our opinions and our experiences, and we share them. And people may choose to implement them or throw us overboard because they think we're wrong, crazy, nuts, whatever. But some people just want to distance themselves from us at all costs. And that's what happened to me with this one particular person who's a broadcaster, and I have a feeling that's happening to you. Let's talk more about science when we come back right after this top of the hour news and commercial break. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, hour number 2. Doc Rams with us. RichardAllenMiller.com. RichardAlanMiller.com. Rick, I was looking at the internet.
Wait.
Yep.
Let me say something here. It's important to me. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. It's not your power in fluctuating and losing things. It's not my incomes and da-da-da-da-da. Let me give you an example. Last night, my girlfriend and I chose to just take a look on Amazon on my book sales and my books. Now, I have submitted 5-6 years ago my bio. And my bio is on all my little books. And as a science fair project, Richard Miller, da-da-da-da-da, in 1960-61, da-da-da, that was later used by NASA to measure the water on Mars. Now, last night, I went on Amazon, and it says the water on Venus, and Venus was capitalized. Now, who did that? And why did that happen on Amazon? And what happens when I call Amazon to correct that one little thing that I just noticed last night? Now, I'm using this as a metaphor. I am being dogged at every orifice. And it's not me doing it. It's not me imagining it. Venus was capitalized to stand out as an error on purpose in the bio under my ESP book. Now, who did that? When did that happen? And how do I get that fixed? And oh, wait, that kind of anomaly exists in 20 of all my books on Amazon. Every single one of them has at least 3 or 4 abnormalities that I did not do, did not exist, and yet does now exist. Meanwhile, there are now, if you go under ESP, 60 retail stores that are selling my ESP book cheaper than I'm getting it from Nick. How does that work? Then I try to tell Amazon this, and I get sent to the Philippines, Mr. Mueller, da-da-da-da-da, and I say I want to escalate, or my girlfriend says I want to escalate, and they bring on a supervisor who's the same person. And she lied. She acknowledged she lied. It's been recorded. We've got it. And I want to say something to Amazon about that. How do I do that? Now, it's so frustrating. It's I just call Amazon, and I now realize it's not Amazon. It's Ingram. It's Ingram and Lightning Source. That's where it all started 2 years ago with a layoff of my office manager for stealing. And we can't get there from here. It's all so convoluted that it has overwhelmed me to the point where I would call John Moore or somebody for help. I need a detective. I need a copyright lawyer. I called a copyright lawyer last week. This is a really good, listen to this one. She's high-end, very famous reputation, came highly recommended by my layout queen that runs 2 different universities' publishing houses. And I call this woman up, and she says, quote, Dr. Miller, representing you with Amazon would be a conflict of interest. And I said, why? And she said, Dr. Miller, that telling you that would also be a conflict of interest. And then I realized that Amazon has gone out and gotten all the different copyright lawyers so that they can't represent people like me because it's a conflict of interest before I even wrote my book. And I am sitting here going, okay, I'm going to write to Donald Trump. And I wrote to Donald Trump. And I'm not impressed with Trump anymore, but I'm better than Clinton. And here we are. I haven't received a single word. So then I get a bunch of vets behind me, vet clinics, where they mass 20 here and 70 there and, all of that, wanting to help me. Do you think that anybody cares? Yeah, well, people listening right now care. You care about me because you can see I'm very transparent. And what's happened is I've been drawn and quartered before I even woke up this morning. Didn't know it. Don't know that I'm dead. Oh, yeah, I died last year. And I'm hallucinating the whole thing. Where did Venus come from? Out of nowhere. And it just happened. And every day, something is dogging me like that. Is that an AI? Because it would require a massive group of high-end techs constantly, what are we going to do, Miller, today? As they're around their coffee. It isn't like that. And I'm now being looked at by friends as, Miller's got Alzheimer's. Okay, FYI, people out there, guess what? There's no history in my family of Alzheimer's. I'm a smart individual and not a paranoid. I'm usually laughing all the time. That's what my logo is. And yet, here I am being looked at. Well, we're going to have to put you on some meds. What? And I don't know where to go. I don't know whom to talk to. And I don't know right now, including my immediate family, whom to trust. It's crazy. And I know for a fact that CIA is involved with Amazon, and my ex-wife is high-end right spin. So what am I going to do now? It's not my ex-wife, probably. I can't prove anything. I have to wonder, and that alone came out of Tavistock as called, and the correct word is called gang stalking protocols. And what they do is they lay herrings in front of you that go nowhere on purpose as dead ends that you spin and spin. It's like somebody that dies and you've never had closings. Now, I just had a recent one like that and realized there are some terrible people out there that will use this crap, like pulling the guy's logs out of his property rather than taking yours right there already. Why would they do that? Well, they're after, it isn't about the logs. There's something else going on. Do you think that farmer or you will ever know why those logs were taken and yours not? It's a can't get there from here kind of thing. And I'm now at war. I don't know what I'm fighting. And that alone makes me look like there's something wrong with me by people looking inside the house. If you're inside the house, like my girlfriend is, poor Julie, I never expected to be able to show her this wonderful, lovely life I'm now enjoying. It wasn't like that when I opened my door. door and wanted her to live with me. And now I'm going to try, unfortunately, to protect her by pushing her away from me, because I don't want her to have to go through what I'm going through. And now I can't trust anything anymore. My closest friends. Oh, my lawyer of 37 years walks out the door. You're just acting like a victim. Oh, yeah, I am. I don't want to act like that. What do you do now? You fight? I don't want to fight. But I'll tell you one thing, and this is a really important lesson. If none of you walk away with anything else, remember this lesson my father gave me. If you seek all ways out of a fight, you don't want to fight, nobody wins. But if you're forced to fight, and you're lucky enough to get them on the ground, you always put your boot to their face and scar them so they don't do it again to someone else. And that's my father's lesson, and I'm at war with something, and if I should ever be fortunate enough to really know who did what, you're going to regret that day, because the reason the military chose me originally to head up and start up the first SEAL teams is that I don't give up by definition. It's called tenacity, and it's more important than unrewarded genius. It is what rules the day, and it's the bottom line. And that's one of the reasons I'm still last man standing, and I would have been a much better friend as a co-respondent than an adversarial approach to me. That's what I have to say for this morning.
All right, I've got a couple comments, but we've got Mark in Illinois. Mark, welcome. You're on with Rick Miller and me.
Yeah, hi, guys. Last time I talked to you, I was in Missouri, and I got out of that place, and I'll tell you what, and God delivered me. But you say about about going through persecution, but the greater thing about all this persecution is when I prayed to the Lord, and I said, Lord, why is all this happening? Can you take it away? Can't you stop it from happening? It was really what I didn't understand was that there was an awakening, an inner awakening to identity, responsibility, and destiny.
All right, you're dead on that one. I have been going to church every weekend now. Every weekend. And I find consolation and solace there. But guess what? I'm reminded of the old joke when the Jew said to the God, or the Christian, he said, well, I didn't know. And God looked down and said, well, you know now.
Mark, do you want to hold through the break? Mark, do you want to hold through the break? Do you want to hold through the break? Dr. M's with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and Mark in Illinois. Please continue.
Well, there's two kingdoms at work. There's an invisible kingdom that's called the stone kingdom. It's mentioned in Daniel chapter 2, but it's this kingdom that the Lord is, and He's tearing down all this other kingdoms of this world, Babylon the Great. And what's happening is that a lot of us are going through persecution, extreme persecution, because God's allowing it to wake us up to our identity, our responsibility, and our destiny of who we really are as the people of God, people of Israel. And it's very hard to go through all of these things, I know. But I can tell you this, that the Lord's going to come out on top of all this, and those who walk in the truth and follow the truth are going to be in that kingdom. And that's why this war is waging across this whole planet, and distraction after distraction, trying to pull people away from the really truth of the inner person, of who you are, to awaken to your identity, your responsibility, your destiny. I can't stress that enough. And if you do search for that, you'll find out all your answers.
Ricky, you have a comment?
And it's just that when you start this arduous thing, you're distracted. The kitchen's on fire. Okay, you go in and take care of the kitchen. Then, wait a minute. There's a UPS truck showing up. And what happens is all of a sudden, after all of this, taking in the UPS, yesterday it was FedEx and UPS. Don't even ask what happened. And then I get this DHL thing, and it's DHL.com. Yeah, it's bogus and had a virus this morning. And by the time you finish with all of that, what happened to the week? Nothing got done except that Mars changed to Venus. Mm-hmm. Now, you tell me what is dark side Luke and what side is sunny side over with my eggs. And I am realizing that how much of this is I'm bringing to myself because of my attitude. I am about as positive a person as anybody can imagine, and that's not happening. And I'm trying to be a positive man. I love Julie. I just don't know what to do. I'm dead stop. By the way, Grace, thank you for the glasses. They're on the back, advertised on the back of Science News, by the way, FYI. No, this man is correct, and that's one of the reasons I'm going to churches now. And when I say churches, plural, I went to a metaphysical church a couple weeks ago, and that was interesting because the pastor that first started the church back in 1986 happened to be visiting, and he remembered me, and I remembered him because I was going back then. And here we are, 37 years later, kind of like nothing's really changed. Wow. I'm still war with something. I have no idea what. I think I have some suspicions.
I have several comments. Rick, I have several comments about this.
Yeah.
Right now, the gate to our farm is locked. Okay? I don't want any visitors. I don't want people showing up. I don't want people interrupting my life. People call here and they say, Mrs. Finelli? And I say, I'm sorry. She doesn't live here anymore. Okay? I'm getting rid of people who are calling, trying to sell us things. I'm telling people who we don't want to be bothered with. I'm not talking about students. I'm not talking about instructors. I'm talking about the riffraff that finds idle time because they're bored or because they're trying to sell something and they want to interfere with our lives. I'm giving him the heave-ho. I'm throwing him overboard. And I have to say, she doesn't live here anymore because if I say she's up on the roof and she's busy, they keep calling back. I have to tell them something that will get them to stop calling. And that works. Mark in Illinois, thanks so much for being with us. Rick and I will be right back. Dr. M's with us. And George, if you can just hold on. George is in New Hampshire. Just hold on for a minute or two. I've got a comment I'd like to share with our class. Rick, your father mentioned to you that avoid fights. And if you have to fight, as a last resort, make sure you put your boot to their face and scar them so they remember. My father said it, yes, my father said it slightly differently, but same message. And my father said, Vinny, avoid fights if you can, but if you have to, finish it. Okay? Finish the fight, meaning make sure you prevail. Okay, I've been involved in at least 4 pretty significant fights in my life, and I'll just tell you one small one. One small one was, let me tell you about this guy. This guy's name was Rory Ellinger. Rory Ellinger was a alleged representative in the state of Missouri. He was a good boy. He was raised, and you can go to, you can type in Rory Ellinger, and you'll find Wikipedia, and this is what I'm reading from. So he was a liberal Catholic, so he was a Christian. He joined the NAACP. He was briefly a bodyguard to Martin Luther King. He was the chapter president of SDS, Students for Democratic Society. So some people might say, well, heck, and he was a lawyer. Okay. So what a wonderful guy. Well, he decided to float a bill in the Missouri legislation, and he and a gal named Jill Shoup, both Democrats, introduced the House Bill 545, banning the possession, sale, transfer, or manufacture of certain semi-automatic rifles and magazines that are capable of holding more than 10 rounds, and certain shotguns with grips that they didn't like. And if you didn't destroy them, get them out of the state, or give them without compensation to the state of Missouri within 90 days, you would be a felon. Well, I took exception to that. Why? Because I happen to own an AR-15. And I happen to own magazines that are greater than 10 rounds. Or at least I did at that point. Let's put it that way. And I took exception. I was frosted. So I called the Missouri House of Representatives. I got their cell numbers. I gave them out over the air. And I continued to do it for a week. And I told people to call them up. Tell them whatever they thought. Well, the next day, after the first announcement that I made on Missouri radio, AM radio, out of Springfield, I happened to catch the news that Rory Ellinger and Jill Shoup were being interviewed by KMOV TV out of St. Louis, and they were beat up. People were yelling and screaming and calling them all kinds of names during the day and at night. And where did they get our phone numbers from? That's what they wanted to know. And so years after that, so we killed that bill. Okay, we killed it. Years after that, I happened to be in a restaurant where another alleged representative, Bill Ringgold, state of Missouri, was trying to promote his bill, which was called the Right to Farm Amendment. He wanted to make sure all farmers had a right to farm, which we already had. Okay, but he wanted to make it subject to approval by the Board of Health. More government bureaucracy in the face of farmers, which would further restrict farming and make it subject to more regulations. Well, I was against it. And so I happened to be chatting with him right after his presentation and his roundtable discussion, which they couldn't figure out who I was. And I just told him I was a guy that had a calf. And I was, I'm trying to be a farmer. And so I wanted to know about this bill. So I happened to show up at this restaurant. And I said to him, do you know the name Rory Ellinger? He said, oh, my God. And I'm paraphrasing. That poor guy. Oh, man. He wanted this, he floated this bill, and they just beat him up. Oh, that poor guy. They were relentless. They were merciless. They were rough on him because of House Bill 545, trying to steal our property, known as AK-47s, AR-15s, magazines, shotguns, and the like, and would cause us to, if we continued to have them, 90 days after this bill became law, we would all become felons. Well, they remembered that. They remembered what happened to Rory Ellinger. They put a boot to his face and scarred him. Okay? That's what your dad was talking about. That's what my dad was talking about when he said, try to avoid a fight, but if you have to, finish it. So we made sure that he became very well known. He became notorious for the grand...
You had data. I'm not sure which way the bullet came from. I heard it go by. But okay, so you get a Doppler, and it sort of kind of came from over there a little bit, but you're not sure if it was up high or down low. But, it was so quick, and then you hear the pop, by the way. That's how it works. And in the field. And I got shot at, and I'm being shot at, literally. And I don't know from which direction the bullet came from, as a metaphor.
All right. Well, let me tell you, don't expect, I'm going to click, George, you are on the air at any time if you'd like to speak. I just want to let you know that when the state of Missouri attacked our family and wanted what they claimed was $100,000 in unpaid sales tax, which was absolutely bogus. Absolute bogus. They were fishing. And I exposed the state of Missouri in this escapade, this illegal escapade on the air for at least a week. I read their threatening letters. I read their responses. I even read their apology to me saying, oh, most so sorry, wrong guy. Yeah, I'm paraphrasing that. But I got two letters of apology, one from senior legal counsel, state of Missouri, and one from the Director of Revenue, okay, apologizing to me for the attack. And it was a vicious attack. They wanted to steal our farm. Those parasites, those thugs. Well, I gave out their names, their numbers, and I was relentless. And you know what? I put a boot to their face. Just metaphor, okay? The way your father described it, the way my father described it was...
I don't have a name. I don't have a phone number.
Okay.
I don't have a direction of where this is coming in. And now I'm wondering, is there something wrong with me?
All right.
No,
well, that
really.
happens. That happens, Rick.
Well, you doubt yourself. You doubt.
People, and Donald Trump said that. Donald Trump started to doubt himself. You know, he's fighting the whole cesspool, the swamp of Washington, D.C. He's fighting that day and night, 24/7. He's surrounded by a bunch of lying, cheating, stealing.
Right, you're right. Everything is
perverts.
Broken. It's about trust, and that's why America is being broken down right now. It's about trust, and whom can you trust? When
George,
at the end of the day, it's every man for himself kind of thing, and it's a survival issue, literally. And it isn't about greed, anger, jealousy, the deadly sins,
Rick, it is about greed. It's about their greed.
I didn't even think about it like that. That's why I didn't notice it. I don't think like that.
It's their greed. It's the sum of all their greed of the government corporation. They want more. They want to be able to put their feet up and say that they're going to work and how hard it is having a government job. And then the corporate hierarchy, the upper echelon, they want their massive undeserved payouts, and it's their greed. So you take the sum of all the greed of the top management of corporations and of government corporations. You put it all together, and that's how we got where we are. George, your thoughts, please.
Well, I can just say we've reached the ages that you don't live 60 plus years on this earth and not run into some things where you learn a few lessons and you pick up a couple of scars. Dr. Rick, I just want to tell you one thing. There's a man in Grants Pass who told me a very long time ago, you might even know him. I'm not going to mention his name, but I'll just say he told me it was a Ku Klux Klan town, and I always thought the Ku Klux Klan were primarily down south. But I guess they had some branch offices in certain places, and that place was one of them. And he moved up there around 1980, 1981. He bought Tall Timber Ranch. Are you familiar with that place?
I know his sons, and I know what's happening.
All right.
That's a terrible thing.
Well, I'll tell you, he went through a lot of the things you went through, and on top of it, he had to deal with, he was swimming off of his place. He was on the water down at Ventura, and he would swim every morning. And I guess some of the yachts that would go by sometimes would just dump their sewerage from the boat right out into the sound. And he, unfortunately, swam through a patch, and he swallowed something that it turned out to be an amoeba, and he goes, for the next 20-plus years, he went through that medical matrix. He survived it, but just narrowly, but he learned a lot about the human body. But he said $20 worth of enzymes. He actually had to more or less heal himself by getting the old books and really delving into it. And he found out that $20 worth of enzyme tablets would have cured him in right order within a week. And he had to go through 25 years of hell. Plus, he had to take on the town. The newspapers were against him. They tried to make him look like a cult, and he wasn't.
Pretty good, man. I mean, I'm persona non gratis. They've sent honeypots, literally, in the middle of the night to scratch at my back door with big bags of drugs that I didn't play. It's called leverage. And, I'm well familiar with all the in-games locally. But, Jesus, this is creepy when it's about your incomes at 74. That, for me, that smacks of senior abuse. Now, I'm watching this whole thing go down like that, and I'm not going to go postal, but I have a friend that would like to do that for me. Now, what am I going to do? Drop a nickel back? No, because I don't believe in that. But that would surely do it the way they're doing it. The ends do not justify the means.
Rick, George, hold those thoughts. We'll be right back. A couple quick comments. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about Wi-Fi dangers and how to manage them and still have Wi-Fi. And then we're going to talk about more miles per gallon in your car or truck. And in class, I talk about honesty and integrity, and I think it's very, very important. But how do you stop the attacks, these non-stop derailing attacks, the ones that interrupt your day, the ones that just are relentless, people calling, and they don't know who you are, but they're calling to just derail you? Well, the only way I can think of is to say, she doesn't live here, he doesn't live here, I'm sorry, you have the wrong number. That's the easiest, most effective way. Yeah, it's not exactly truthful, but what do you do when they do it nonstop? What do you do? So I just wanted to mention that. George, did you have any comments that you wanted to share?
I'll just say one tactic I use is that when they have those computer-generated phone calls, and I still have a landline, but what I do is when I pick up the phone and you say hello, there's that momentary silence for maybe several moments before somebody picks up, and you realize they're just sitting in a room somewhere with a bunch of phone, and when they get a connection that somebody picked up a phone, they immediately pick up the phone, but it takes them a few seconds. I just immediately put it back on the hook. This way I don't have to deal with them, I don't have to talk with them, and after a while, it just, for one reason or another, they eventually go away. And like I said, these aren't solicited calls, like you said. But right. I will say this. The number one thing you have to deal with, though, is not allow the stress to get inside of you. And it's a psychic jujitsu, and we don't know how to, we don't have the ability, we may have had it, but in that school system, everything else, we've lost a lot of our own inner sense, our innocence and our innocence. AntidoteForAll.com is a 7-minute free thing, but I find it's very good for stress. It's very good to clear it, but it's a very good way to just build up your psychic defenses, because you know, and I know, and Dr. Rick, you know, Ben, you know, that basically we can't stop the punches coming, but we can build ourselves up so that our muscles can take the punch and at the same time maybe even hurt the person who's punching because they're not getting the desired effect.
Rick, your thoughts?
I was going to try and end it with a wonderful quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, but do you think I can find where I put it?
Well, Rick, let me ask you.
Guess what? The Lord giveth, and the Lord giveth again. Here it is. The future belongs to those who believe in the reality of their dreams.
Okay. Rick,
that's how I'm going to do it.
Speaking of the future, can you tell us what your vision of the next 50 years looks like? Do you have any thoughts on that?
You're talking about me? Me wanting to do that?
Yeah.
Here we go. Between now and 2020, there will be a massive global change in weather, in coastline, and the so-called end of days. And by 2024, we'll be looking back. By the way, because the Earth has gained 60% more mass, basically the tsunamis will be less than Noah. But basically, and that was where they found his ship up on top of a mountain somewhere in Sinai, Mount Sinai. I will say that this all is by Aborigines, whom I key off of when I can't work science. Even over the Inuit, which are 7,000 years over Hopi. Inuit are ones that I used to hang out with in the Koyak. I go inside the Arctic Circle, I've been to Fort Yukon, and I do sit out in the woods with them. Well, they don't have woods up there, but they do have dry riverbeds. I've been there inside the Arctic Circle, and you know what they can do? Rosettes. They grow everywhere, man. They have a special little machine, the Koyak, could go into Safeway. Oh, they did go into Safeway up in
Rick, 2024, what would happen by 2024?
We'll be looking back at what had happened and say, what just happened? And it'll historically have a mark. And then we'll be back into the saddle again, only this time we'll be doing it with a little different technology than...
We're out of time. George, thank